When it comes to recovery, you've seen up to this point that there's a lot of resources. It could be foam rolling, it could be trigger point therapy. One of the things that I find is very effective is contrast therapy, but a lot of people are unfamiliar with what it is, or they make it so big extremes it becomes uncomfortable. Here's what I mean. Contrast therapy is nothing more than using a temperature deviation to create a response inside the body. Typically it's going to be hot and cold. But I'm always very cautious to say that, because when I say cold, people think you need to be able to freeze meat in it. And then if it's hot, it's so hot you can boil a lobster. I apologize for the vegetarians. But the idea here is we don't need to have dramatic temperature changes. Now, you can go in some textbook environment and they're going to say the bigger the temperature deviation, the more effective. Okay, I guess in a textbook setting, they're right. Here's the reality of it. You're a human being. If you jump in, I cannot stand cold, so this really resonates for me. If I'm going to go into something that's so cold that it feels like I'm pins and needles, what are the chances I'm going to continue to do it? Zilch. I'm not going to do it. And I don't expect you to either. I also don't like extremely hot water. So if it gets to a point where like I can barely even get in it, what's the chances I'm going to continue to do it? Zilch. So now I'm not going to do contrast therapy, even though I know it has tremendous benefits on recovery. Pull it down a little bit. There's no exact science. There's no got to have the temperature at X and then you've got to have the deviation by Y, hotter, colder, colder, hotter. Just understand that the body will respond to temperature differences. So let's just say, for conversation's sake, 20 degrees. So you've got yourself in something that's around 70, 72 degrees, something that's 90, 92 degrees. What's cool about it is when you drop yourself into the cooler water, that causes vasoconstriction. This is why it's such an instrumental tool for recovery. You've gone out and you've torn the muscle tissue down. You jump into that bath that's cool. Notice I didn't say freezing, but cool, and it will vasoconstrict. It will offset the inflammatory process. Now, why would we want to jump back into warm water? We just got done racing. We got done big ride day, big day of testing or training. The cooler water is going to help control inflammation. Well, Rob, why would we want to jump into the hot water? It's a great question. When you jump into the warmer, hotter water, it opens up the blood vessels. You go, well, wouldn't that increase the inflammatory process? Great question, but no. What happens is the blood vessels open up, and because you're so good and diligent with your nutrition, the nutrient-rich blood, because it opens up, that nutrient-rich blood goes into that area and it facilitates the nutrient saturation. It brings in the amino acids to rebuild the muscle tissue. It brings in the vitamins and the minerals. It brings in the sugar that's been depleted through exercise. Then you go back to the cooler condition. What does that do? You've opened it up. Now we're going to tighten it back up again. Now, you see the benefits of it, right? One offsets inflammation and swelling. The other one brings in nutrient-rich blood and relaxes the tissue. Now, how do we put those two together? Whatever increment works for you. A lot of it hinges off of logistics. So if you're fortunate enough and you have a jacuzzi and a pool, it's really easy, right? You just go from one to the other. You could do 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, and do it for an hour. If you've got to get out of your bathtub and go downstairs and get in another bathtub, maybe go 5 minutes cold, 5 minutes hot. Depending on how much time you have, go 10 minutes cold, 10 minutes. Doesn't matter the duration. The key is to keep them 1-to-1. So, for example, my favorite is to do 5 and 5. I'll do 5 minutes of cold, 5 minutes of warm, 5 minutes of cold, 5 minutes of warm, and I'll do that for whatever time I have available. I'll grab a book and I'll read, just relax. Particularly when I'm in the cold, I need something to distract me, so I'll focus on reading a book. When I'm in the warm, I'll focus on diaphragmatic breathing because I'm a little bit more relaxed. Come up with your own strategy. But the idea here is always end on the warm. That's because just like the metal on your motorcycle, anything that's left cold is going to be hyper stiff. And I don't want you stepping out and kind of hard to move. Always end on the warmer side. Now here's a little side note. Move every appendage you can when you're in the water. So for example, let's say I'm working my legs and I'm from my belly button down. When I'm sitting in there, I'm moving my ankles. I'm moving my knees up and back and forth. It's what we call do the alphabet. So literally with my ankle, I'll do a capital A. I'll do a capital B all the way through. because particularly when you're in the cold water, when you just sit in that cold water, the muscles stiffen up. So by implementing some movement with that, you still get the benefits of the cold, but you don't get out of there feeling so hyper stiff. So just a little side note, a little fringe benefit. I have a massage therapy background, and that was a little trick that we would do with all of our elite athletes, is have them move when they're doing therapy. The body embraces it. If you've got some junk in your, the joints that just feels like you're a little bit sticky and gummed up when you're doing the contrast therapy, because think about it, if I'm gonna do the capital B, let's say this is my ankle, look at how I gotta go down and up, I gotta go inward, and I gotta go outward. So I get all of those ranges of motion that we're looking for. And it applies to every joint in the body, elbows, knees, ankles. I know it's tough. That's why I'm saying if you're in a jacuzzi or a pool, obviously it's easier to be able to move around than if you're in a bathtub. So that's what contrast therapy is. That's why it works. That's how to use it. Please try to incorporate it whenever logistically possible and avoid the high temperature deviations. Ice baths are painful. I think they're almost counterproductive. And boiling yourself like a lobster is, in my opinion, counterproductive as well. So be safe, be fun, have fun, and enjoy the benefits.